Hi guys, Michael Ingledew from TDW, and this week I want to talk a little bit about capturing or engaging our end users with our tech data. Now the reality is, in aerospace and defense, we're very focused on making functional data that's safe and accurate for our end users to use. Now the reality is that often leads to dull, dank user guides, manuals that our users are expected to engage with. Now, does it have to be like that? Well, we've written an article in the next issue of the magazine coming out at the end of September, which we will discuss how we can engage our end users. But the reason I wanted to do this short tutorial was because I was recently on a trip to Germany where I was meeting some clients, but I also tied in meeting some of my family that I've still got living over there. Now I stay in a relatively nice hotel, but the problem is when you stay for a set period of time, the breakfast is very samey and I get very bored. And being a creature of habit, I like to have my New York style bagels on a morning with some peanut butter and a nice strong cup of coffee. So Claire actually suggested, why don't you take your own toaster and coffee making machine with you, and you can break up the boring breakfast, which I thought was a great idea. So we rushed down to the local store here, we bought a cheap throwaway toaster, and I took it to Germany with me. All very interesting, Michael, but what are you getting to? Okay, when I opened the toaster when I was in Germany, the first thing that came to me was the user guide. Now the user guide says quite clearly, ignore, fail, read, succeed. Now I'd heard lots of stories about these one-liners or statements that non-traditional aerospace and defense organizations are putting on their user guides and safety instructions to pull in the user. Now this is the first time I'd actually encountered it in a domestic product, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Now, that then led me to think, well, this is a great topic for a tutorial, because we've done an article for the magazine, as I say, on engaging our end users and why specifications limit us from engaging our end users. And I thought I would use this example that it actually pulled me in. It actually made me pick it up, and I flicked it open. Now, the problem is where this then fails is the actual guide itself is kind of representative of the price I paid for the toaster. It's poorly laid out, it uses bad fonts, it uses bad illustrations, but that's only people like you and I look at things like that. I guess that the general populace using a toaster will actually think, well, maybe I should read this, maybe I should try and get engaged. Now there are lots of ways that me as a tech data professional, I would have changed the way that this was laid out and made it a little bit more engaging for me to go beyond reading the cover page and actually reading the things you want me to read. So this is why we came up with the article in the next issue of the magazine. In the aerospace and defense sector, we're actually very poor at engaging with our end users. Why? Because we are so focused on safety, we are so focused on delivering to specifications that we often lose sight of the end user and the guy who's actually going to eat this meal. And we want them to make sure that they have a fine dining experience when it comes to using our tech data. A business mentor once said to me when I was working in the software sector, is that when you're designing software, you should make software the end user wants to use, not has to use. Now, in our sector, when it comes to producing manuals, invariably, we are producing data because we know the end user has to use it. And we don't want to be making things look pretty or looking at how we can be using different layouts and styles and those things. We have style guides that are very boring and from the 90s that are still being used. And we're really not thinking about the end user. Now, recently we announced to our members network that we are actually going to be producing an article on engaging end users. And we received a great email in from a very well-known and respected individual in the S1000D community. And he sent in a message saying that he loves the idea of the article because they'd been producing in their organization data that they assumed was engaging and useful for the end user. And it actually wasn't until they went out and spoke to the guys in the MRO that, what's the data like that we're producing for you guys? That they realized that what they were producing was actually not that great. And they thought it was great. The end users are crying out for technology and advancement in the way that we deliver data. Unfortunately, a lot of the specifications that we use actually preclude us from adopting these kind of approaches. That's why we wrote the article on using video as an alternative and an article on engaging your end users. I'd be very interested to hear how you engage your end users in your tech data, because I hear lots of stories in mainstream markets where they do try and pull people into the user guide to make sure they read those safety instructions, to make sure they read those correct operational guides, because after all, it's just a toaster. Let's throw it away. If I hadn't opened it, if I hadn't read it, I may have plugged it in and not realized there was polystyrene in the actual little chute where I put the bagels. I hope you find that useful. Hope you find it thought-provoking. If you want to learn more, go ahead and order the next issue of the magazine, because we're going to have an article on engaging our end users and can we engage our users in the aerospace, defense and space sector, especially when we are using things like S1000D DITA or ATA iSpec 2200 or any other specification that might be around, because user engagement is so important today. And we use lots of examples as to why it's important in the article. Again, I'm Michael Ingledew. I hope you found this useful. Please do share it amongst your organization and tech data professionals. You can go ahead and create an account over on our website where you get access to lots more tutorials like this, or you can order the magazine and read more about what we're saying about user engagement. If you're in Seville, I look forward to seeing you there. I'm off. Bye.